Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Decorating Happily Ever After. I'm Jeffrey Kevin. Today I want to bring you another coffee time story. So grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and I'll tell you a funny little story from when I was a child.
You're the cream in my coffee. You're the salt in my stew.
I call this story the Liberace Lou. Probably most people from their childhood remember their playmates or their school days, but for me, what I remember are the decors of the homes that I frequented as a child. I remember my grandmother's house. It was decorated in mid-century modern before it was cool. And I also remember my aunts. They were into the Mediterranean style. There was lots of crushed velvet and reds and golds and lamps that were bigger than I was with 50-gallon drum shades. And our house was sort of a mixture of early American, lots of hard rock maple, eagles, that sort of thing. But the house that made the most indelible mark on my child's decorative imagination was my Aunt Millie's house. My dad had one older sister, and they were as opposite as night and day. But every year, around the holidays, we would go to Aunt Millie's house. Whether it be Christmas or Thanksgiving, depending on what year it was, we rotated from year to year, and the family would all go to her house. And we were a pretty small group, but every year, that was the highlight for me, was to go to Aunt Millie's house. And so the morning would come, we would have our new outfits. My brother and I, we would be told to be on our best behavior. And so off we would go. And I would be giddy with excitement because I was going to get to see my aunt's house and going to get to see all of her pretty things. I would often ask my mother as a child, why is Aunt Millie's house so elegant, so fancy, and she has so much and so different from our home? And Mother, not having a jealous bone in her body, she would tell me, well, that my aunt and uncle had been married a lot longer than they had, and they had had time to accumulate. And looking back on it, that was really true. So, like I said, the day would arrive, and we would be off to Aunt Millie's, and oh, my dad would just dread the trip. He would fuss the whole way, and he hated every minute of it. So when we would get there, we would go in, and Aunt Millie, she would have the meal prepared, and she would hold court in the dining room. And, of course, myself, I was relegated with my brother and my cousins to the kids' table, which didn't suit me at all. I wanted to be in the dining room with the grown-ups. I was grown up from the age of about 5. So, after the meal was over and the dishes were cleared away, the relatives, they would all gather in my aunt's den. So after a little while, Aunt Millie would summon my mother for the tour. Now this was an annual event where my aunt would take my mother around and show her all the decorative improvements that had been made on the house over the last year. I, of course, was not invited, but Mother was gracious enough to let me tag along. But usually, the tour would begin in Aunt Millie's living room. One of the things that made Aunt Millie's house different and more impressive than ours was that she had a formal living room and a formal dining room, both of which we didn't have in our home. It had more of an open plan. And anyway, my dad considered those rooms a waste of space. But we would usually start the tour in the living room. Aunt Millie had a spinning piano, some wing chairs, a formal sofa, and every year she would tell us about her new piece. Now, she wouldn't say a piece of furniture, but it would be a table or a chair or a new sofa, but she always referred to it as her new piece. So she would show us her new piece, and Mother and I would be oohing and aahing over it. And then she often told us of her secret desires, as she called them. This included a grandfather clock, butler's tray table, and I can't remember the other things, but referring to decorative items in your home as secret desires, well, that was right up my alley. And so after we had toured the living room, we would usually go down the hall. We would see my cousin's bedroom. She had a typically girly bedroom, I think white furniture, some lace. Then we would look in on my cousins' bedrooms. They shared a room. They had bunk beds and plaids, and I wasn't much interested in their room. We would take a quick peek in the hall bathroom. We would see what decorative changes that she had made in there, maybe new wallpaper or new linens. Then the tour would take us into the dining room. It had celadine green walls. She had a china cabinet that was laden with her wedding china. I believe it was a wheat pattern. There were elegant sconces on the walls. She had a formal dining room suit. The table was antique. She would often tell us the story of how she had found it in a junk shop, which I found hard to believe because we passed that junk shop on the way to her house, and it looked like Sanford and Sons, and I was in disbelief that she found a dining room table that looked like that in that dump. But she would often tell us that story. And then one time when we came, we were in for a treat. She had changed the wall color in the dining room. It was peach. Now, keep in mind, it was definitely in the pastel range, but not any shade of peach would do for Aunt Millie. It was rusty peach. And I was totally enthralled with the color. So as soon as I got home, I started begging my mother to let me paint my room peach. I was probably about 10 years old, and after pleading with her for a while, she picked up the phone and called my aunt and asked her for the color. She told her that Jeffrey wanted to paint his room the color of her dining room, and my aunt gave her the paint color, and so I had a peach room. And whenever we got finished painting it, my dad walked in and said, "You painted your room pink?" And I said, "Oh no, it's rusty peach." But back to the tour. After the dining room, we would go into the master bedroom. This was an addition that they had added onto the house. It was a large bedroom. She had it decorated in golds and blues. Aunt Millie would always say that if you kept something long enough, that it would come back in style. And I suppose she's right, because I've decorated countless rooms in pale golds and pale blues. And she would show us her custom bedding and drapery. And then after that, we would go into the master bathroom. After the tour was over, we would join everyone in the den. Inevitably, nature would call. And rather than going to the hall bathroom, oh no, I made a beeline for the master bathroom. Once the door was locked and I was safely ensconced in the elegant sanctuary, I would take this opportunity to sample all of the luxurious wares. Aunt Millie had a vanity that was a feast for the eyes. There was no shaving cream or toothpaste or hairbrushes. Oh no, that was all safely tucked away. Her vanity was strictly for display. On the vanity countertop, there was a soap dish that was cut glass with antique brass dolphins holding it up on a marble base. And in the soap dish, there were small little rosebud soaps. There was also an ornate tissue holder. There was a towel holder with elegant little hand towels. And there were wall sconces. Aunt Millie also had show towels, monogrammed show towels. Now this was something that we didn't have in our house, and my dad considered it an abomination to have a towel that you couldn't use. But Aunt Millie did. She had her monogram show towels. And of course, being raised right, I knew better than to use them. She also had a shower curtain that was done in the blues and the golds. There was coordinating wallpaper. There was also an elegantly framed antique print that hung over the toilet that I found most fascinating. It was a still life. It had food in it, which was really bizarre to me to have in the bathroom, but it was a still life. There were apples and grapes and pears. There was a wedge of cheese, a chalice. There was a decanter of wine. But what was most fascinating about this picture was in the background there was a knight dressed in his shining armor, holding his sword, fighting off a dragon. And I thought this was really an unusual picture, and I could just stare at it for days. The toilet had its own tuxedo of carpeting that had a tank cover, a seat cover, and I think it was in the blue or gold that coordinated with the bathroom. Yes, kids, it's hard to believe there was a time when people actually put carpeting on their toilet, but it had its own carpeted cover. But what made the bathroom for me, what drew me in like a moth to a flame, was the candelabra that sat on the back of the toilet. Now, in my childhood mind, it was fit for Liberace's piano. In reality, it was probably a candlestick with some prisms, but to me, it was the most elegant candelabra. It had candles with dripping wax, prisms hanging down. Oh, this was the life for me. I loved it. This was luxury and elegance at its highest. I thought, why can't we live like this in our house? Yes, this was what I wanted, elegance, even in the bathroom. So, it was then and there that I made up my mind I was going to have an elegant home, no matter what. If I had to lie, kill, cheat, or steal. Oh, no, wait a minute. That wasn't me. That was Scarlett O'Hara. But that did make an impression on me. I don't know if my aunt ever knew that I was that taken with her bathroom and how elegant it was. And so I know the question you're willing to ask, do I have a candelabra on my toilet? Well, the answer is no. Oh. But it's not for trying. I just never found a candelabra or a candlestick that I really liked on the back of the tank. I think our toilets are shaped a little different today. But if it counts for anything, I do have a crystal chandelier. I think my nephew summed it up best a few years ago. He told my mother, he said, "Uncle likes fancy." And he had me figured out. I have always liked fancy. But it is funny the things that you remember as a child. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a comment below. Tell me what you remember from your childhood, the homes that you were in, and the decors that made an impression on you. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, Decorating Happily Ever After, and turn on the notifications bell so you never miss a video. I'm Jeffrey Kevin, hoping that you decorate happily ever after. Bye-bye now.
You're the